Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session today. I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming Helena Lisachuk from Deloitte, who will be moderating the panel IoT and 5G Growing Together with New Opportunities for the Industries. Please welcome this impressive panel.
Thank you, Terry. And I'm very glad that my accomplished experts came right away. I was going to do special welcome, but please do sit down. Yes. And we are really quite lucky today for a couple of reasons. We had an opportunity to talk about something new and different. And we had an opportunity to do it on day one on a big stage. So in talking within the program committee, we thought, hey, there is not enough talk about 5G and big industries. So what can we do in 1 week with some of the greatest names in the industry with very interesting insights? And we just pulled it all together in a couple of days. Huh? So thank you very much, dear panelists, for being so flexible and so fast to respond. And we are going to start with the introductions, all right? And thank you for coming. It's 6 p.m. All right. So I'm Helena Lisachuk. I'm with Deloitte. I'm part of the program committee for the 4th year, working very closely with the IIC and OMG, supporting this event. And I also lead IoT within Deloitte. Now, together with me, let's start. Trygve, would you like to?
Yes, please. Thank you, Helena. So Trygve Harvei, working out of Oslo, Norway. I'm part of a digital team we have in oil, gas, and chemical in ABB, working with technology every day, all my life actually, and enjoying Barcelona. So IoT, industrial communication, is my specialties, and I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Andreas.
Andreas Kombicher from Siemens in Germany. I'm from corporate research, doing research on IoT systems with special focus on wireless networks.
Good evening. My name is Phil Skipper. I'm the head of Vodafone's IoT business, and I look after IoT strategy. And that gives me a bit of a privileged position in being able to look around and decide where the markets are going, what the technologies are enabling. And it's really good to be here. So we look forward to an interesting discussion.
Thank you. Vernon, please.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Vernon Turner from Ecosystems, a young startup market intelligence firm. But I've been in the market intelligence and research industry for almost 20 years, and for about 6 years now, have built an IoT practice, a global IoT practice at my prior company, and have watched this industry finally come to fruition in 2018.
Thank you. Again, thank you for being here. So what we're going to talk about today is 5G. And when a large global telco company talks about 5G, everybody says, oh, yeah, of course. But what we don't hear a lot talked about is how 5G and Industry 4.0 and companies like ABB and Siemens and the broader industry reacts, and what is going on, and what is the state of readiness, what is the state of maturity, what's already in place, what's the projection, what is trajectory. When you hear the word 5G, you think this is quite exponential and the impact could be dramatic. In terms of numbers, we expect, 400 million 5G connections by 2022. So it's a good number to kind of think about, right? But what does it mean for the industries? So, Trygve, let's start with you. Is 5G on the agenda for ABB? Are you already piloting something? Do you have some success stories maybe you would like to share? Is it important?
Thank you, Helena. Yes, 5G is important. In fact, all communication, digital communication, is important for IoT, OT, operational systems as we deliver, and IT systems finally, of course. So, but 5G is promising a lot, and coming from R&D, I kind of like talking about something that's going to be deployed in 2020 with quite kind of certainty. So it's a risk that it can be used for, or it can't be used. So for industry, we're very reluctant to use subscription models until now. But what 5G promises with the high broadband capacities, the possibility to connect a lot of sensors, and the quality of service, which we will come back to, is very important. For instance, for use cases like smart grid. We see more and more a mix of energy sources like green energy, of course from the grid, as well as like hydropower, but as well as wind power, solar power, and these things. And it's also necessary to store these green energies locally. So what we will see, and what we see, and what we do a lot in the proof of concepts, and even deploy at stadiums and sports arenas and these things, is to mix local storage with green energy sources. And this happens in the middle of cities. So how do these things communicate? Because they need to communicate to be in sync and really be a safe source of reliable energy. So that's one area where 5G really could fit our purpose.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And Andreas, how far are you on the journey, and where do you see the potential?
As ABB, Siemens is a things company, and our products have to be connected. They are connected since years, but now we have MindSphere, and 5G, with its promises, could be the foundation for the connectivity of all these IoT devices. 5G is coming out of lab now into the direction of products. So we have the hands-on technology, we from research, but now it has to come into the business units. And that's what happens. So Siemens is driving standardization. Siemens is partnering. You must have heard of 5G ICEA, association to work together before standardizing, and so on. And that's what I mean. 5G is major now. We have to bring it into direction of products and find out how it fulfills its promises.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. But 5G, where is it today? What is the state of 5G, Phil?
Well, I was hoping you'd ask me the question whether I thought 5G was important. I'd have to say, yes,
I thought maybe I'll skip that one, Phil.
But I think what we have to do is, when we look at this evolutionary process between what we have today, which is 2G and 4G services, and we move on to 5G services, there's a lot that can be done already on 4G. And especially when you move into 4G and some of the enhanced functions around 4G+, there's a lot that can be done. So what we're in the middle of at the moment is, the process is ongoing. We've announced a number of really interesting pilot locations for 5G. We have, for instance, a test track in Aldenhoven in Germany where we're testing 5G for automotive. But I think when you look at where 5G will have some of the biggest influences, especially in the industrial sector, it's when you get this mix of high bandwidth, high density connections that you can support in one site, but you add two important components. One is actually low latency, and the second one is quality of service. And I think what that will do is it will enable the network to move from just being about data to also being about control. And I think your ability to control assets remotely using 5G in the future is actually going to be one of the things that really changes the way IoT is considered, especially in the industrial landscape.
But is the case, is the use of 5G always justified? Is it always needed? So maybe we had quite a few debates about the sort of a tailored, as needed type of connectivity. Would you like to comment a little bit about that? Because it's a full spectrum, right? How do you make the right choices?
Exactly. I think this really comes down to what is the quality of service and the criticality of the application that you've got. So there's a lot of conversation around private networks today against national networks. There's a lot of conversation about closed versus open infrastructures. And I think what you've got to do is to look at the criticality of the application and actually deploy the technology in the way that best suits the outcome you're after. So if I was looking, for instance, at factory automation or process automation, I'd probably be looking more towards a private, more managed network. If I was looking to applications around factory to the field, where I can actually control devices remotely, then of course there's a lot of value in the national network. So I think it's really down to the quality of service demanded and the criticality of the application. But your customers of potential customers of 5G, hopefully of Vodafone, you should give us your views.
So from Siemens' point of view, please never forget the brownfield. So there are factories out, there are trains out, there is equipment out, which works since 10 years, 15 years, and it has worked in 10 years also. So we can't throw it away and put 5G there. 5G has to come and to complement it, but it's not the solution to clean up and build it up from greenfield.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
Can I just step in there?
Yes.
So the difficulty that I have as someone who's looked at the industry for multiple years is that I know you mentioned that you have to find the quality of service, but there is so much, when you look at the IoT applications, many of them, unless they're specific around high bandwidth, low latency, and quality of service, if you did a poll today, you'd find that, I would be curious to find out how many people will put their hands up and say, I need 5G. We're at a point here that unless we see a step function in performance, cost, and we're not going to see this disruption that we've looked for. I'm a firm believer here that customers are going to take what they have today, in traditional IT language, they'll sweat the assets as much as possible. I think they're going to come back and say, show me why I need to move to 5G. And I think I would challenge Phil to say that the adoption rate might be slower than we anticipate, only because I think IoT customers might find out that they've got platforms that work today, except in industry. And I think in industry, we're going to have something that's a little bit different, and that is that we've done this for multiple years, and the reason why these systems have worked so well is because they are proprietary. Generally, programmers don't touch them. And I think when we think of IoT, I would throw out here and say IoT is built around speed of development, speed of change, and therefore a DevOps mentality is kind of layered upon the IoT spectrum. And then how does a DevOps mentality dovetail into 5G needs and requirements? So maybe I'm the contrarian in the panel here, but I would stand back and say I think the adoption curve, even though the technology will be here, may be longer than anticipated.
You mentioned that unless there is a triggering event, a compelling event that happens, that would kind of make it a bit faster, more grow, maybe not exponential, but at least linear at a proper pace. Can you think about an event like that driving it, or something that you would imagine might happen that will really expedite, or it's already here?
So I think that it's really an opportunity now for industry and telecoms to come together and really agree upon the requirements. Because as you say, this will not happen by itself, just because it's there. It really needs to have the use case. In the industry today, we are used to deploy systems with either that are wired or that uses ISM bands, that is license-free bands. But there's not enough space. There's not enough radio band to really do what we want. And the legislation is so that one system has the same rights as another. So we can kind of have this quality of service that we need. But really, if we come together and talk about the functional safety and the functional integrity of the core of an automation system and do everything else using IoT technology and 5G technologies, we can do this step change. But then we need to do like Germany, set aside radio frequencies for industrial use and really look upon the requirements together. And that's an opportunity to at least have this linear growth. But because the reach of 5G could be more than one country, it could be global and so on, and that's really one factor for big companies to deploy products in large areas without having special support for special areas. So come together with industry and telecoms.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely right. 5G is a communications platform upon which you can build applications, be those industrial applications or whatever. And you're also right, and we said this, 5G is an evolution of 4G. There are many applications that you can serve on 4G today. And if you were to say to me, what's the killer application for 5G, it's probably something which is a little bit further away in terms of the autonomous vehicles and so on and so forth. But I think what is clear is there is a large installed base of assets which are out there. They will have to move, and I think the role of the telco is to provide the openness and the roadmap forward so these technologies become available and people can move and adopt them in a way that suits the business model and the application and what they're trying to achieve. So I don't think this is suddenly overnight, bang, everyone's going to change, but there is certainly an evolutionary path. And the clearer we make it, the clearer it enables our customers to plan to digitize their businesses in the future.
So Helena, can I just, you mentioned about a triggering moment or, and Phil, you mentioned about a killer app. This year's been really, for me anyway, this year's been really interesting to finally hear the discussion is around IoT plus analytics. And then this morning, and even on the floor, now we're talking about digital twin. That is a lot of resources that we've never seen before that are being deployed on the factory floor that require a completely new way of thinking of how do we build a network to support that. And to me, if I was looking for that killer app, it's more like a killer solution. That to me is the triggering point for 5G. That combination of AI, machine learning, and IoT giving a solution like a digital twin.
And digital twin 2.0, because the classical models may not really require or justify the investment. It's more about digital twins of digital twins, with some autonomous processing, probably with some additional elements. We'll have a session about that tomorrow to talk about how we can come up with the next generation of digital twin with 5G. That would be a nice one for discussion. But thank you. Yes, it's definitely very well. But as far as where we are today, you mentioned as a call for action, let's collaborate, right? Let's industry and telco come together and define these standards and requirements. Do you think it's a massive undertaking? Are some of these requirements, and then you mentioned the groups, associations already been in place? Is it just a matter of like elevating the importance and pushing it forward, or we need to start from scratch in some instances?
I think it's both. And one important thing is that industry happens where the resources are, like oil for the North Sea or in subsea mining. Or even Amazonas jungle for some gas resources, for instance, from the gas industry. So you need the infrastructure where the resources are. So to have models where the Vodafones and so on don't have the full stack of technology, but can provide wireless services as needed with the right quality of service, and probably host that, and also have an environment to run our software in, which is safe enough for our customers to trust that the data is contained there. And if we solve all these things, standardization and how this is deployed, not only as a full stack technology, then I think we have a winner.
All right. Andreas, what do you think?
I agree on this. And don't forget the guarantees. So in process industry, for instance, if you have this 3, 5 nines or so, if the 1 minute the system fails per year is really 1 minute, maybe the process stops and the refinery is out of order then. I think there are new business models behind for us, for you, for all of us. And if you talk about standardization, it's also the regulation. It's not the same frequencies all over the world, and also the framework contracts around such systems.
Yeah. You've mentioned international, cross-border, and then I'm thinking about the point Phil made about the quality of service, and how do you ensure the quality of service is seamless and identical almost, right? Is it possible, or is it a dream with 5G?
Possible or dream, I don't know yet. These are early days in the technology, but I think it does bring an interesting question into light, which says, if we believe in the hypothesis that quality of service will be important and a key differentiator going forwards in terms of being able to run these systems in a consistent and deterministic way, it has to be replicable from country to country, because we're all global players here. And you can't afford to have a system which works in Munich with a particular quality of service not working somewhere else. So I think it's a challenge, and I think it's a challenge for telcos and a challenge for the industry to really think about how to, in effect, roam based on quality of service as opposed to roam based on radio coverage. And I think these are some of the interesting issues that come up with things like 5G, because I think it's all down to new business models, new way of working, new ways of engaging with customers and so on. So it's not without its own challenges even to a telco, given that we're going to be the ones that roll out the network. There are quite a few other fundamental operating models that no doubt have to be looked at as well, as they have done with other services we've introduced, them like 2G, 3G and 4G.
All right. Okay, thank you. Would you like to add something?
No, I think the quality of service is a critical point that's undersold when we think about 5G and IoT, and particularly when we pull in Industry 4.0, because now we're bringing in industrial IT and 5G experience. And when we think about telcos looking after voice and data in a traditional manner, we have to put that aside and stand back and say, well, we don't know if it's 5 nines that we need, or if an IoT device is actually going to start generating data at any point. So I think the quality of service on a global basis is something that we need to really take a hard look at. When we have a multinational corporation that's trying to roll out an IoT strategy, say in manufacturing, it can't be inconsistent. One factory can't be performing in a different manner from another factory, and I think the opportunity for 5G to normalize that is something that we should really try to dig into a little bit deeper.
Yeah, sounds great. And to some extent, again, not to bring topic of collaboration again, but it's important because now it's the factories, it's the players, it's IT, it's OT, it's the network, and it's geography, because those are all the elements you need to kind of have in place to ensure the seamless and consistent quality of service, right? Is the answer to get there always the same if you're starting with a brownfield or a greenfield or any sort of a starting environment? Is it going to be different for the industry players or versus some other entities or industry that will be adapting that?
So if I'll try to answer some of it, I think that, as I said, about you need to have the integrity of your core functionality, like if it's a driving car or an autonomous factory, it really needs to run by itself on its safe premises. But really, to run it optimized, run it using less energy, having a good plan for maintenance, and so on. Those are core elements of how much money you earn on your production. And adding IoT sensors, which are not actuators like you have in OT, would help insights. And really doing this on large basis worldwide is something that 5G could bring to the table. So on the journey towards autonomous factories, autonomous oil platforms, autonomous energy cells, having more than one source, like green energy and grid energy, that's where we really could play together.
Okay.
I think we have to define what is IoT. So today I think we say IoT is M2M, from massive machine type up to super critical. And if you just want some new sensors to optimize your database and so on, that's different to add sensors to a mission critical application. That's we have always to have in mind behind.
So it's also about expectation, you say,
Yes.
and definitions.
And one other point comes in my mind at the moment, the innovation cycles are different.
Yeah.
So in industry, it's not possible to have new equipment all 2, 4 or 5 years, as with smartphones you have. There are 10 or 20 years. That's an issue we have to solve together.
And I think that collaboration question becomes really quite important, because what's happening, and we're seeing it already in industry today, is the reliance on IoT as a means of connecting things together is going up. So that reliance only increases as you move into 5G, because the reliance is not just on whether the network is available, yes or no, it's whether the network is available with the right quality standard at the right time, with the right bandwidth, so that collaboration for me is really about working even more closely with customers to understand the criticality of their application, so the solution can be designed to deliver that 24/7, 365. And I think that's where you'll find the much closer engagement between telco providers, device providers, operators, factory owners, and so on, because the way that connectivity becomes an integral part of that process chain will only increase. I think that's one of the things you'll see happen. We see it now. I think it's become even more critical as 5G actually becomes established in industry.
Can I just comment on that? And the interesting part of this with me is collaboration. If you think about manufacturing today, we make a product, we put it into a channel, and we sell it. It's a straight, almost linear process. I think when you talk about collaboration in the way we're looking at 5G and IoT and the factory floor and Industry 4.0, it's a sense and respond model whereby either the customer or the device is the centerpiece, where the telcos, the carriers, the factory floor itself are all part of an ecosystem. And one thing that is evident here is that transparency between these groups are important, because now the customer sees everything that's going to happen. The customer sees whether it's a network problem or whether it's a factory floor problem, and they see the impact of that, as opposed to the traditional manufacturing process where the customer, all they see is the last person who touched the product, which is a sales rep or a channel partner. So I think the business model is going to change when you think about collaboration between 5G and IoT and Industrial 4.0. That is something, again, that we don't hear a lot of talk about, but the companies that are successful in implementing Industry 4.0 have created an ecosystem of partners, and some of those partners are new to themselves because they're able to participate in this circle, as it were.
So am I hearing it right, that we need to have tighter collaboration? Are we talking about potentially ecosystems and mini ecosystems? And it could be tremendous value of leveraging 5G if it's used for proper use cases, right? So to some extent, identifying the use cases and putting a problem in a heart, then coming up with the proper adoption and solutions, right? So we are about to run out of time. What would be your call for action for this audience? We believe in 5G, we believe in potential of 5G. What would be kind of one thing you would like to see change, request? Collaboration, standards, ecosystem, use cases, technology, yeah?
If starting with me, so I think exactly to look across border lines. There's a lot of international companies here that needs to drive a change in the way we do standardization, not doing it national, but using this type of Industry 4.0 initiatives to really collaborate in other ways. Then to really help deployment by having the same standards across borders. So that's one thing for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Andreas?
I agree. So we have to work together in standardization and before standardization, and maybe it would help to have some budget, public budget, to doing this large-scale rise to bring in some SMEs into these ecosystems because they don't have the money and the manpower to support it.
I think I'd simply say focus on the business outcomes you want, not the technology inputs, because there's loads of companies that can do the technology in this ecosystem. And I think the second one is engage early. There is a lot of value in 4G and 5G and the evolution process between the two. And I think get in early, work within the ecosystem, talk to people who are doing it, talk to your peers, and actually understand how you can extract the value of these new technologies going forwards.
Thank you. Vernon?
Yep. So for me, I think it boils down to the fact that if you're a greenfield site or a brownfield site, because I'm a big fan of disruptive innovation, and I think 5G makes that gap or that quantum leap to allow disruptive innovation. So my advice is, if you're a brownfield site, I would set aside a 5G group. I'll let them do their own thing, experiment, start small, because I think ultimately you're going to have to bring the two groups together, existing technology with 5G. If you're a greenfield site, why are you waiting? Use 5G, because you're going to get that quantum leap of performance and enhancements to the services. So to me, it really relies on, are you trying to retrofit, or are you trying to innovate from scratch?
Yeah, great. Thank you. And I think we all want to think about ourselves as innovators, so great. Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience? Please.
Hello, Levent from Beyond Group. Maybe my question is more to Phil. How do you see the impact of the transition from 4G to 5G on the actually connected cars, which might include several implications?
Well, we connect a lot of cars already on surprisingly enough, on 2G, 3G, and 4G. So, and I think it really comes down to this gap between whether the vehicle is connected for infotainment and telematic services and so on. And then there's the next step between where it goes from a data application to a control application. And control applications for us would include autonomous vehicles and so on. Now, there's a second element there, which is if you're driving a car around, you need ubiquitous coverage of 5G and so on. So I think that autonomous vehicle in the integrated transport infrastructure is one of the end game plays for 5G. And I think what you'll find is that cars will naturally evolve. We're already working on that. Our 5G test site, that's where we're testing a lot of vehicle-to-vehicle, vehicle-to-infrastructure and connected cities pieces. But again, you have to bear in mind that the automotive industry has a fairly long burn, and they are very good at actually introducing the technology when it's right. But it's this balance between network availability and services. But I think you're absolutely right. 5G is one of those. If you're going to do the fully autonomous car in a way that works within a dense urban environment, you're probably going to need 5G. What you can do today, a lot of infotainment and telematics we're already doing on 4G services.
Any other questions? Please.
Thank you very much. This was an awesome session. Can you talk about any instances where 5G trials are covering aging at home or safety, two of the things that you just want that quality of service for, and the latency becomes the problem?
Yeah, I'll just give you one example. We were actually controlling a crane on 5G from, I think, 250 kilometers away. And I think that's an interesting example of how you can take real-time control using IoT as control network with the high bandwidth in terms of data. Now, that's an example which you could imagine for remote mining sites and so on. But that's just a pilot we did to actually show that capability. That's one use cases. There will be others.
So we demonstrated robotic movement and actually did some remote operations at a trade show using 5G kind of early stage technology with haptic feedback. So I hear about doing this for surgery and so on, but I will probably start with remote inspection and remote maintenance. So the technology is there, being a bit skeptical for the core functionality, want to see it proven in use first, but certainly remote robots with haptic feedback so that you can really be there is one area to exploit.
Yeah. Thank you. Any more examples? Huh?
To be honest, we don't have too much experience with 5G as the technology is not out yet. So it's coming out of the labs from the chip vendors and so on, but in my lab it's not there.
But we could team up, right? So you
Yes.
could use a field lab
That's the reason
if you
I'm
need
here,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Then thank you so much. Thank you for sticking around. Really appreciate it and appreciate your support towards 5G. Thank you.
Thank you.